Clay. I found the trivia on Memory Alpha for this episode, Deadlock, to be kind of interesting. So they're continuity trivia questions. So I'm going to give you 3 questions. Let's see how you do. So
let's do it.
I guess some of them you can't really know, so it's just kind of a guess based on this first one. So this is the first of how many times that the destruction of Voyager is going to be depicted on the series?
Oh, interesting. 4.
5. Pretty close. Good job.
That was my next guess.
How many episodes have dealt with encountering the Vidiians? So what number episode of this is this with the Vidiians as an antagonist?
I want to say this is 4.
It is. Good answer. Sticking to 4.
Sticking to 4.
So what the hell is it? Oh, okay. This is so Janeway, over the course of the series, last question, is going to die 9 times, which seems incredibly high. How many times is this that she's died?
What number time is this that she has died?
Yes. So how many episodes has she died in so far?
If I can't specifically remember another time, so I'm just going to say the second.
It is the second. Yep.
Okay. What was the other one?
The first one was Time and Again, which was in that first season where the aliens have those goofy like costumes, and they go through. They go into that city that was like nuked right before they got
that's
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is it, the second of 9 times, which is mostly impressive. I should have asked you how many times is she going to die over the course of the series, because that's more of a strange number. But anyway,
I would have said 4.
This is Deadlock, which is, let me scroll all the way back up to the top. This is the 21st episode of the second season of Star Trek Voyager. 18th of March, 1996 was the lucky day that this was born. Written by Brandon Braga, directed by David Livingston, in universe date 49548.7, which is 2372. In this episode called Deadlock, while trying to avoid Vidiian territory, Voyager is nearly destroyed by proton bursts coming from an unknown source. So who are you going to call when you got proton bursts all over the place? Deadlock. This is generally regarded as a pretty good episode. We get to the Wildman baby has been born. So that's another serial plot that's been wrapped up in this.
Can you remind
season.
me why it has spikes on its head?
She just said the husband is an alien with a spiky head.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. I think they say what kind of race he is. He's like a Kataran or something like that. But she was not. And just to clarify for myself, she was pregnant before the ship got sent away by the caretaker, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Well, wait. How long have they've been out there for almost a year, right? Was she? Who's the father?
I assume she must. Yeah, because I think don't they have that moment where she discovers that she's pregnant? I think.
Yes. Yeah. But I thought in that episode, my Amy was asking me about it. She's like, "Who's the father?" And I said, "Oh, I think she was pregnant when she left at the start of the series, but I think they've been gone for too long. Although I don't remember. I don't know where the father is on this one. I don't know. Seska's father issues are taking priority, I guess." Yes, this is Deadlock. I'm kind of searching for a way to get into this one. Before I ask you your general thoughts about it, I guess a good way to go in is that as we're so far into Star Trek and so far into Voyager, and we've seen like 10,000 episodes of Star Trek to this point, it's hard for me to watch the series now, especially because we've been jumping all over the place doing Enterprise before Voyager and all the later Star Treks before Voyager and everything. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to watch Voyager, and it's probably like an unfair thing to do to Voyager. It's hard for me to watch Voyager and not think about all the rest of the franchise that goes along with Voyager at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it would have been, I don't know if it would have been interesting, or it would have certainly been different to watch the shows in order, going from like their air date order, basically, to see like how the series developed and how it evolved and everything. But I feel like Voyager runs into Voyager does something really interesting in this episode, which I found the episode itself was pretty engaging, but I almost want to jump right to the end. And the ending line of this one is, "We're in Starfleet, weird is the name of the game."
Yes.
And I was thinking that like Voyager's pretty much as far as the 90s Trek concepts could go, right? Like, because they're now at a point where everything just seems kind of like you have to be outside looking in, almost in this metatextual way of just saying like, this is how a Star Trek episode is. It's just kind of weird, you know? Like, because I liked this episode. I thought it was really engaging to watch. I had a lot of fun with it. There are moments in here that we'll talk about that I think are less engaging. But at the end of it, it's pretty hollow in terms of what happens in it. And I was just thinking, like, did they use up all the good stories and ways that you could dig into this in the earlier series before they got to Voyager? Do you know what I mean? Like, is Voyager just left with, we can come up with a sci-fi concept that's kind of cool, has some good action in it. You're going to have to do this like decision. But at the end of the day, there's like no core to it because the cores have been done already in other shows.
Yeah, it does. The ending is interesting because they kind of landfill it a bit. Landfill from what the fuck is that movie?
Beer Fest.
Beer Fest.
Beer Fest.
Where like what actually happens, I feel like deserves a little bit more reverence. But yeah, that last scene is just kind of like Harry Kim going like, so all my friends are dead, but also all my friends are alive, but they're not really my friends because my friends are on a different ship, but they are my friends because they're the same people. And Jane was just like, yep, it's pretty strange. And like it probably deserves a little bit more of a moment than just like a sitcom. Both characters laugh and they freeze frame kind of ending.
Pat
like
each other on the back as they walk
like
away.
A Dukes of Hazzard ending. But at the same time, I think that the episode that precedes that is pretty good, despite.
Well, would you say that like so? Harry Kim is almost the least of the problems. Harry Kim is the most overt to me. That it's like sort of bizarre. Like he goes through an incredibly what you would think would be like traumatic escape from the original Voyager and ends up here and it's just like, hey Doc, it's good to be back with you, who's exactly the same. And so it ends corny, but like even what I was talking about, like the show has nothing really left to say because any of the doubles meeting each other should be more interesting than what happens in this episode.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was going to say next. Is I was going to say that ending is strange, and the episode's pretty good, despite the fact that ultimately there isn't much more to it aside from just being like a fun Star Trek setup and kind of actiony episode.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that because I would take this over some of the other crap that we've gotten.
Yep.
But it's just, there's not a ton of weight given to what exactly is happening. I mean, I guess they kind of put it all on Janeway's shoulders, really, because she kind of they have her talking to herself, and they kind of have that debate about doing what's right, the blowing the ship up, and that stuff is pretty interesting. But that's about as deep as they get with it. Like it's
this has, but it has a. I just feel like there's so many options here. It's sort of strange that they chose this episode to be the baby is born episode because there's a lot going on with a mother now has a baby that's not like it is her baby, but it's not really her baby too. Like
right, yeah.
So and I mean you're basically dealing with like a transporter argument here, which is that like is this the same person? And you kind of go, yeah, it is the same person, but it's not really the same person that's here at the end of it. And
well, you've got the whole thing with this one too, where it's like, is there such a thing as the original ship?
Yeah, sure. Right. Did it disappear?
Which ship is the ship that gets destroyed? And ultimately, does it matter? But it's tough because
there is an original because we go back with them at the end of the episode, right? It's the ship that gets fucked up is the original Voyager. That's what the episode is saying anyway. Right?
I guess
because Harry Kim moves on to that ship, and that ship continues on its way. You know what I mean? Like,
right, but I mean, like, but there's no discussion of that in the episode.
No,
where,
right. Yes, yeah.
Where there very much could be, and even so, I don't even know if you necessarily can say that's the case.
No, I think there's an argument you could go either way. I'm just saying from a script perspective, the ship that we start with is the main ship because we go back to it at the very end. It's not the episode doesn't flip us to the second ship is the real ship that escapes it by the end of it. You know what I mean? Sure,
yeah. But you know they don't really get into that. And, I mean, I think I think it's really kind of like what are you looking for out of a story like this? Because I do agree it's a weird episode to choose the baby being born, but at the same time, I actually kind of like respect it.
Yep.
Because like, who gives a shit about the baby being born?
Well, that's another. Yeah, it's a.
You know, it's like they kind of the most interesting thing about it is basically summed up in that one sentence that Janeway has on the bridge before shit goes crazy, where she's like, I don't know if I should congratulate her or apologize because like, what is this place for a child to be born into? You know, that's like probably the most interesting thing about the pregnancy. So if you're not going to do
that's
something,
what they're trying to do, I think. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
So if you're not really going to do anything with it, you may as well burn that off in an episode where some crazy shit happens.
Yeah.
And you get to kill a baby in a Star Trek show.
Yes. Yeah. It melts too. It's just, he's like, its bonds fell apart and it melted.
And so like, I kind of respect that. And like, it's not, it's about that, but it's not about that. Like they don't really belabor a lot of the things that this episode could be about. They specifically are not belaboring the point in order to keep it kind of like snappy. And despite being dense with technobabble.
No, the technobabble's the technobabble is an incredible pace killer in this episode. Every time they stop to explain what the fuck is going on, it's like, wow, I feel like the show just hit a brick wall.
I was watching with my girlfriend at a certain point towards the end. She goes, man, they really have to do a lot of modulating on this ship.
Yeah.
Because basically everything they say is, there's one point where Chakotay says something to the effect of, I can't remodulate the modulator. And then Janeway goes, well, have you tried modulating it? Something like that.
He's like, damn it.
But you know, it's like that stuff. I think there's like 30% too much of that stuff in this episode where it's like, I know you have to do it, but
needs to be quicker.
Think you can, yeah, you can dial it back. And like Janeway and Torres like have a back and forth like 3 or 4 times where it's like, just do it twice.
Yeah.
Have Torres say something, Janeway says something, Torres says something, end of the situation. But yeah, it's like, I think they are kind of making a choice where they are choosing the snappy sci-fi mind-messing problem over really belaboring a lot of like thematic elements. And you know, I guess it depends what you want out of it, because like I didn't mind that. And I don't know if you always have to do that. And so like that didn't really bother me too much in this, because I think there's room to do that, but I think they just made a conscious choice. Like, well, yeah, we got this. I think you do kind of undercut it all with that last scene, because this is another one where I think if you had like you get that scene at the end with Janeway and Tuvok, but you know, you don't really get a ton out of that scene.
Yeah,
but I feel like you could have had addressed some of that stuff there, whether it's which ship is the ship that survived, or you know, some of the other weird gray areas that they're dealing with. But then to end it with Harry Kim just like kind of being okay with everything that happened, and then her being just kind of like, yep, that's another day in the life of the Voyager, chum.
Yeah. It
does kind of take a little bit of air out of the balloon, but aside from that, I don't really mind the focus on pace. Because
I guess my issue with it is that it feels to me like all the series after this, and Voyager in particular, feel like they do this more than the early shows did, which is to rely sort of on like the spectacle of the thing. And it's still like 90s and early 2000s television, so the spectacle is not incredible. Like, I think this episode is good in terms of what the like ship just like a disaster on the ship type of stuff can be. I think that this episode is pretty effective at it. I do think that it suffers. I do personally think that episodes like this suffer when it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. And I don't know if it's just a Voyager problem or if it goes back to my original point of like the franchise is just fucked out at this point and it can't come up with things that are novel in a way. Because like when I watch an episode like this, my mind is mixing. It's like, oh, this is like that episode of TNG mixed with that episode of this thing, like TOS.
Sure,
and it's like,
sure.
so you're kind of repeating ideas. And I find the biggest disappointments to be stuff like the Harry Kim. That's not really discussed. There's no idea about like, there's nothing really interesting about the Janeway conversation with herself. Like, even to the point she calls herself Captain, which is interesting to me. Like, you'd think that they would have a much more interesting personal discussion about what's going on there that the show just isn't equipped to deal with. And the baby is the other last thing. It's like if you're I think if you're going to have the baby born in this episode, this was probably like one of the more unrealistic, like even outside of Kira giving Bajoran birth, which is a quiet, like no one can make noise during the birth. I thought this birth process in this sequence was probably even worse, where the birth itself doesn't make a lot of sense because apparently the doctor does not offer painkillers whatsoever in any situation with this woman.
Well, why do they even?
He beams the baby out.
Yeah, why do they even have labor? If
I don't know.
They
just beam it out, and it's going to be okay. So that's the other weird thing.
I feel like they tried to gloss over that a bit when he did his first initial scan, where he's like, "There's no residual blah 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 activity from the transport," like implying that people don't like to do this because it could fuck the baby up or something.
Yep. But the baby thing is handled so unemotional. Like, a baby dies in this episode, and it's not really like a thing that matters at all. And then the baby just comes back, and that's like a horror story. Like if you end this episode with Ensign Wildman like looking at that baby in the crib, kind of going like, "Is this my baby?" Like,
oh yeah,
there's like a weird.
Well, that's the urban legend or the fairy tale of the changeling, right? Where you you give birth to your child, and then the baby you take home turns out to not be the baby not be your baby.
Right.
It's
yeah.
like a troll or something.
Well, Ray Bradbury had a good story about that too, just about like a short story about like parents bringing a baby home and the mother's like, something's wrong, like this is not my baby, and everyone chalking it up to sort of like the postpartum depression type stuff, and then it turns out to be a little bit more dark and twisted than that. But like I don't know if it's Voyager. I guess my point is I don't know if it's Voyager specific or if it's just the franchise is tired at this point, because I feel on a prior show like TOS, DS9, and TNG, there's something else going on in the background of the show that makes the sci-fi component a little bit more interesting. You know, like like Second Chances, the TNG episode where Riker meets his double, right? That's all about like the life you didn't get to live, you know? And there's like a thing going on there, and this doesn't have a thing that you can really lock onto.
Just because I can't remember the episode that much, even though it's one of my favorite episodes.
Second Chances?
No, the one where the Enterprise keeps blowing up.
Cause and effect. Yeah.
Is there something else going on there aside from just them trying to figure out what's happening?
No, that's just a cool sci-fi concept going on. But yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is closer to that than it is to Second Chances, though, because like again, I feel like there's a lot of room to get into that stuff you're talking about, but I just think that they're choosing not to. Whether or not that's a plus or a minus is, I guess, mileage may vary. And the other
Braga
thing
wrote Cause and Effect too, so it is.
Oh,
like,
it did.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing about this episode is, honestly, I enjoy it, but I think I would like it a lot less. I think the thing that really makes it memorable is that they do kind of pull a switcheroo on you with the ending, because I feel like I at least was going into this episode assuming, oh, the ship that is, I wasn't expecting the nice Voyager to blow up at the end.
Mm-hmm, right.
I was expecting the other one. So that was not the ending I was expecting. And so having that a bit of a switch where it's like, oh, they're actually, the one that seems like it's got its shit together is going to be the one that blows itself up.
Right.
Is a nice twist. But I wonder if that isn't really the main driving force of what makes this episode good, because without that twist, I feel like the rest of it's just sort of like, I mean, the whole core idea, it's not like this is the first time we've seen a double of Voyager. They did it like 4 times in the first season.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying that you think that the twist is the fact that Nice Voyager, which is the second Voyager we see in this one, is not the one that gets away at the end?
Yeah.
Because
I was not expecting that.
See, I guess that's my kind of thing about, like, to me, a twist would be if that Voyager did get away. Because to me, what the script is doing is it's setting you up as the first Voyager is the real Voyager, just because of, like, setting your expectations that this is the crew that you know and they've gone through this thing. So to me, it's almost more startling if you go off with a whole new set of characters at the end, and Harry Kim is like the only one that's from the original ship that we started with at that point.
Sure.
But it ends up ultimately not mattering either way, because it doesn't really matter in the episode itself. It's just kind of like a weird thing that happens, and there's no real good argument in the story that anything should be any different, because the ships are exactly the same as each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it stood out to me, is because I didn't necessarily think that the damaged Voyager was the original Voyager. Like, I think it could go either way. And so, like, I did find that surprising that they played it that way. And I mean, they do, I think what's interesting is they do damage both crews equally. There's once the Vidiians get onto the ship. First of all, 300 Vidiians got onto Voyager.
It's the biggest budgetary constraint, I think, because the episode makes it look like 3 Vidiians are slaughtering everybody, and it's like, what the hell is going on? And to the point where Tuvok is like the first person to get shot, and I thought it must be some kind of plot that they're hatching, that Tuvok set himself up to be shot, because there's no way he can go down that quickly. Yeah.
And I was surprised. I wish they had done something differently to just like show that they were dead. Like have the blasts be more violent or something.
Yeah, but they have to harvest them, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking. That's the problem on Star Trek, is every time unless you get the Star Trek 2 phaser blast where you just fucking disintegrate into nothing.
Yeah,
I always think, I assume they must be stunned. Like, you never.
Well, the Vidiians have an out, right? I guess it's just too clean, but you could have Vidiians just pulling body parts out, like that kind of a thing. Like,
that's true.
You could show a sort of like that death is happening, because I actually thought one of the weirdest strengths of this was that the Vidiians are actually kind of frightening in this episode.
Yeah. They were really scary, despite looking like the California raisins.
Yeah, but they're like their thing is terrifying. Like, boarding ships and just doing this is a very scary idea.
This was the creepiest version I've seen of them.
Yeah,
is actively seeing them boarding a ship and like harvesting people. I mean, it's not entirely the way they do. It's not entirely dissimilar to like the Borg or something, right. But it's still pretty creepy. Where it's they're actively like, we can get this guy's pelvis. All right, take the pelvis out.
Right.
Like,
very dehumanizing for them. But yeah, I liked the Vidiian angle. I thought that they were pretty effective, and I like to me that makes it feel like somewhat of a twist. There is that's the ship that gets. It's through the plot mechanics of whatever the hell is going on. That's the Voyager that actually sees the Vidiian ship for some reason, and
yeah, I guess that's what made me think that the original Voyager was the one that blew up.
Okay,
is because they are the ones that actually engage with the Vidiians, because they don't try to put any sort of parameters on why the Vidiians can only see one of them.
No, they don't explain it. No.
And so my mind just went to, oh, they're the ones who are engaging. They must be the original ship.
Makes sense.
And I do think that's a bit of a misdirect, because it makes sense to think that, and so to see that ship be the one that actually just gets destroyed is a little bit surprising, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's I guess it just comes back to I feel like to really bump this episode up for me, there has to be something lost in the destruction that I don't think really comes across particularly well, because just through what this episode is saying, you've made a Xerox of the crew, basically transporter doubles, and the ship is the same, and they get away. And there's I was trying to think of myself, if I was in Janeway's shoes and there was another version of me and everyone else, and this happened in real life, I was like, would I even really think about this? I can't even understand how this would bother you if it did. Does that make sense? Or does that just make me seem strange? It almost feels like it's a weird dream unreality that there's this other version of you. And the way that they talk to each other and the way that they treat each other doesn't make it seem like there's any sense of I don't know, it's not suicide because you're not really dying, Right. It's hard to describe. It's a neat sci-fi trick, but I just think that it doesn't have anywhere for an actual human story to exist within it, which is just the downfall, I guess, that I'm trying to sort of pinpoint as to why it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Because once the reveal comes up and the technobabble starts flowing, the episode loses a lot of interest for me.
Sure.
I really like the first half of this one. I think that it gets less interesting the longer that it goes on until the Vidiians at the end. But I think it has this flabby middle, which is flabby because there's really nothing else to hold your attention during that sequence. You can't even check in with the Wildman baby, or weirdly the doctor is the one who takes the baby focus in some way. He's responsible for acting through the trauma of seeing the baby die and then not being the doctor that saw the baby die on the other ship. So Picardo has to carry both roles there, and it's just like the mother's not involved, the baby's not involved. There's nothing talking about keeping the baby, what the baby means for Voyager. It was just kind of a little bit of a letdown there.
Yeah, there's surprisingly once that baby's born, the mother is not really involved for the rest of the episode.
No. She's like, hide my baby. He's like, I'll hide the baby in the wall. She's like, okay, goodbye, baby. It's just I find it all laughable. If you can't do that, I think you just shouldn't do it because it comes across badly.
Yeah, I think there's probably there was a few things that I found a little bit surprising. The first one was I wasn't sure when Janeway found out that there were two Kesses on the ship, because she is on the bridge and she sees the ghost of herself, and then she's like, hold on, you guys scan everything in here, I'm going to go to sick bay.
Right.
And then she walks into sick bay, and then she talks to the doctor and she's like, oh, this baby's so cute, how's our other patient? And then turns around and sees Kess. So the implication is that this is the first time she's seeing her, but she knows that she's there.
Maybe she's not weirded out by the ghosts. Is that the way it's supposed to be?
Maybe. I don't know. I guess you could say that she was told about it prior, I guess. But it's not really that big of a deal. But I feel like there's some of that stuff that's a little bit flabby. They make kind of a big deal about Janeway needing to wear that armband to go into the other ship.
Yes.
But then at the end, they're like, Harry, take this child and just go to the other ship. And doesn't seem to be an issue anymore.
Harry with the epic barrel roll that he does in the sickbay to shoot the Vidiians.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. It's probably the best thing he got to do all month.
Yeah.
Also, does this work on time cop rules? Is that what the Kent State experiment is implying, that you can't like if two objects that occupy the same space touch each other, like they both explode or something.
Yeah, they drain each other's antimatter or something, right?
Yeah.
That's whatever this is happening on the ship.
Time cop.
I thought that, and Kent State is where Braga went to school. I guess that's why it gets the shout out here. Kent State is wasn't there a shooting or something at Kent State?
Yeah. 4 dead, no high-o.
Yeah, okay, that is that one.
Tin
right.
soldiers and Nixon coming. Finally on our own.
Finally on our own. Where was the school with the sniper and the bell tower? Was that in Texas?
That was Austin. That was, I think, University of Texas, Austin. UT Austin, I think.
That would make sense.
Man, how quaint was that back in the 60s?
The sniper and the bell tower?
4 people got killed, and CSNY write this amazing song about it, and now it's just like, yeah, every couple weeks that happens and nobody cares.
Well, that was the government, right? That makes it.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was the
not just a crazy lone wolf person or whatever. I had a point about this. I can't remember what it was. It had something to do with that. The shifting of. Oh, excuse me. I guess it's just that. I think that the center of this episode, it's weird because it would be another suicide episode after like a string of 7 suicide episodes, but it's like the decision of which ship should go to me feels like the most interesting part of this episode. And it's interesting because really here it's just that one ship is fucked up and the other one is not fucked up. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I would change that or something, but to have the solution be that only one of these ships can survive, and how do we pick which one when all things are basically equal outside of that? Maybe there's something there. Then you don't get the cool explosions and Harry Kim falling out in space and stuff like that, and Hogan getting his face blown off or whatever. But I don't know. It seems like it doesn't bother you as much as it sort of annoys me.
Yeah, even so, though, like if that becomes the central thing of the episode, I think I think the end doesn't work quite as well, because then the whole discussion becomes about, okay, one of these ships has to get blown up, and I mean, I guess there's more there ethically to talk about. But like if you know that you're driving towards one of these ships committing suicide, essentially, I don't know if it works quite as well as being the answer to apparently Janeway's move is just to blow the ship up.
Yeah, it's the go-to if you need to. Well, don't you?
Yeah, so I think that kind of like if you're thinking about that the whole time, then it kind of takes some of the excitement or surprise away from that at the end. I don't know. I think it's a weirdly a fine line to walk, I think.
Yeah. I just think in terms of like what the series is supposed to be about, and maybe you could say this about all the Star Treks, but it's like the lesson learned at the end of it is like the continuing adventures of these ships is just that they end up on the right side of these fork decisions that they make a lot. Mm-hmm. And like Voyager's journey home could have ended in Deadlock if they were the other ship. You know, it's and I think that's what's so upsetting about or not upsetting, but it's like what's so discombobulating about the Harry Kim thing is that no one really seems to grok that they survived something there, and no one else did.
Like, does most of the ship even know what's going on that ship? As far as
that there is even a double over there and that they blew up, I don't know. I don't know. It's just sad. It's just like it's too glib, I guess, because a lot of people died, and I guess the show just at the end it just has to wrap it up and say it doesn't really matter that they all died because this is the ship of record or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's room. Again, they have these final scenes where it's usually Janeway and Chakotay or Janeway and Tuvok or something, where you can kind of get a little bit you can get more thematic and kind of have a direct conversation about some stuff. And I think it would have been interesting if the conversation they had was Janeway thinking about that and thinking in general about what it would take for her to sacrifice the crew or something. And this idea of like, is are we the right ship? Did the right ship survive? I think there's a lot of stuff there you could chew on in that final scene to really kind of bolster the rest of the episode. But yeah, they just kind of they go out with the quick joke.
So let's go to patron thoughts, I guess, at this point. If you enjoy the show, you can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. You get a bunch of extra stuff, extra podcasts, and all that jazz. You can also leave comments about upcoming episodes. We read them and react to them. So I'll do the first one here for Deadlock, and then I will click into your little Discord bubble. There we are.
Did you know a Deadlock is a kind of battleship?
Yeah.
And also a style of guitar.
And it's a very common hairstyle for African Americans.
Also the name of a group of villains from G.I. Joe.
Go Joe. Any other Deadlocks? Deadlock feels like a Transformers name. Is there a Transformer?
I think you're thinking of Grimlock.
Oh, Grimlock. There we go.
But yes,
Grimlock.
It does sound like...
What is he, the Tyrannosaurus or something?
Yeah. I feel like Deadlock is the worst Transformer because he's just like a doorknob.
Or does he? It's kind of it kind of feels like a term for like when an engine can't turn over or something. It's like this deadlocked. This engine is just completely deadlocked. Clef says there's 2 Voyagers happening today, and the moral choice is between black and gray. You'd best call a pastor for this well-scripted disaster. Is it suicide if you still walk away? 5 quantum superimposed Neelix clones to blow up out of 5. So the next one to you is Kyle Barat with Deadlock.
Deadlock. I'll start with my one complaint. Chakotay's father saying home is wherever you happen to be is the least Native American Maquis sounding thing ever. But everything else is great, using a season's worth of sparks on an episode with great urgency. It's well directed and well written, with this kind of sci-fi ship disaster episode being the flip side of Braga's specialties after the biological weirdness of Threshold. Janeway's scientist nature is again prominent, and there's no straightforward reset button with alt-reality Kim and Naomi replacing their dead counterparts. I do think fans make too much of the Harry thing, though, because yes, this is kind of a different Harry, but he's only different in that he spent a few hours on a duplicated ship. This isn't a Tom Riker scenario. Fuck it, the first 5 out of 5. And it does, the saying from Chakotay's father does sound like something you'd buy that's painted on a piece of wood from TJ Maxx.
Yep. The bargain bin. Home is wherever you happen to be. My mother-in-law had one that said backdoor friends are best, and I was just like, this is the most inappropriate thing that you have bought from TJ Maxx that I can ever see. Let's see here. Any other part about it? There's also there's a DS9 episode, I don't know if you remember it, if you watched it, where O'Brien is time shifting, and the alternate version of O'Brien comes back to his reality at the end because the real O'Brien dies in the other universe, basically.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, so there's that too. So it's not an uncommon thing that hasn't happened before. I guess the fans make a big deal out of Harry Kim.
I think they make a big deal out of it for the same reason you're making a big deal out of it. That's not to sound dismissive of what you're saying, but because it is kind of a pretty strange thing that happens that I'm assuming never gets brought up again.
Right, it's never brought up again.
And I think it's if they had ended on less of a glib throwaway moment, maybe it wouldn't be that big of an issue.
Yeah, just something like that Harry Kim goes into his quarters and he can't find something where he always leaves it and it's somewhere else in his quarters. It's like,
but that's not really like it's not like they live different lives though.
No,
it's
I know
like
that's the problem.
Everything would be exactly where it. I mean, what they should do is they should have Harry Kim go back into his quarters and they show him staring out the window. And then they cut to what he's looking at. It's his own dead body floating in space. That's what it should be.
It just crashes into the window right next to him. Yeah, it's a. I guess it's just really like an exemplary Voyager reset button thing. It's like it's just the pinnacle of what that can be. Taxel Bear says Deadlock.
Sorry, or I was going to say, like, if Tom Paris had been killed on the other ship earlier in the episode to the point where Harry could experience that.
Okay.
For him to come to the other ship and Paris to be alive again, be like, that, give him a moment there where it's kind of setting in what's going, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good, if the show is focused on character, it would be a good way to examine how characters might take their friendships for granted and stuff like that. Like there's something about the fact that you get a redo sort of that should probably be examined here for Harry Kim, but it's not.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I will say this show is starting to do that is lining up with Enterprise a bit, and it's not quite as bad as Enterprise, but it's on that road, I think, is kind of wasting their cold opens. Yeah. And this is a long cold open, and a good portion of it is Neelix talking to
Wildman, Ensign
Wildman about fixing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like if they had done something where it's like you start on Harry and Paris getting into some sort of argument about something.
Yeah.
And then, during the course of whatever, first Harry dies and you're like, oh shit. And then on the other ship, Paris dies, but they both had that same argument.
Right. Yeah.
And so then you come back and now you've got a situation where on Paris's ship, Harry died, and on Harry's ship, Paris died, and now they're like, maybe we should kiss.
Right. There's something there. That's a way to set it up, and it is a huge colossal waste of a cold open, unfortunately. Taxel Bear says, the episode where Harry Kim definitely and absolutely dies. They never bring that up again, and I'm not sure whether I like that or not. However, it does raise the question about saving Harry and baby Naomi was acceptable just because they were needed as replacements, as opposed to trying to save as many crew members as possible, like a second Neelix. It's true. The person selected to go over is the Harry, Janeway selects Harry Kim in front of a lot of people on that ship.
There's really no explanation as to why she picks Harry.
Is she aware that the Harry Kim over there is dead, or is she not?
I don't know. I don't think she is.
Oh, I thought she knew because she's like, we need to send the replacements over there because that's where the baby's going too, because she knows the baby's dead.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it came up and I just missed it. I mean, that makes sense, but still, it seems kind of weird that she's like, everybody stay except Harry.
Yeah, Harry, you get the hell out of here, Harry.
Do you think Harry knows that he's dead on the other ship? Like, do you think they tell him when he shows up? Like they would have to, probably, right?
I think he must know. Yeah, I think he. It's all just the weirdness. Like when he first shows up, Torres is like, "Harry, good to see you again." Like she just watched him die, and she's like, "Well, here's his clone replacement that'll work just as well." It's a little odd. The next comment is Ria Lavi. I might be mispronouncing this name, but I'll send it over to you anyway.
Deadlock. A TNG-style sci-fi mystery episode done well. Janeway is great here, but too much technobabble and cheesy dialogue as per usual for Voyager. A very rewatchable episode, despite the surprising twist at the end. It would have been better for the show throughout its early run to focus on the creepy Vidiians and not the crappy Kazon. 4 replaceable ensigns out of 5. Yeah, I wish I really just don't like the Vidiians makeup. It's I don't know. I understand like the concept they're going for, but it feels like it needs another draft or something to really be something that's iconic instead of just looking like Clayface mid-transformation. I don't know. Maybe that's the point. I don't know.
Yeah, the weird thing to me, I don't mind their makeup. The weird thing about them to me is that their clothes are always very well put together. So it's this startling thing where they have like this mushy face, but their clothes look okay. It might not make sense for them to be wearing rags or something, but it seems more like in line with them that they are just like completely falling apart or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Changeling says, Deadlock, I think these are my least favorite Star Trek episodes where they just bombard you with technobabble until all you can hear is the sound the parents make in Charlie Brown. Although, one thing that gives me a chuckle is when Harry Kim dies, I like to imagine him thinking, why didn't I just stay back on Earth when I traveled to that other timeline? I had a decent job, a hot girlfriend, and for what? So Tom wouldn't be a bum living in a French pool hall. Oh shit, there goes my grip. 2, I'll blow up my ship to save your crew. No, I'll blow up my ship to save your crew out of 5. This is a short one. I'll read it. Eric McGowan says, Deadlock, a strong episode from the second season that usually gets praised as one of the best of Voyager's episodes. I wouldn't go that far, but it's pretty good. Now, were the duplicate Harry Kim and Ensign Wildman really replacements, or were they only the original timeline crew members to survive? 4 out of 5. Poindexter G is the next comment, and I'm going to send it to you right now.
Deadlock. With the 2 Voyagers, one beat to hell and one not, you are instantly lured into thinking that either the undamaged Voyager will be the one that survives or that they'll somehow merge into a complete Voyager. So the twist that the damaged Voyager is in fact the survivor is a great subversion of expectations. This is a really entertaining episode built off of a unique sci-fi premise, and Anomaly of the Week episodes can still work when written well. And add another tally to the number of times that Harry Kim has died. Has he died more than... Oh, I guess he died when they transported him.
Yeah, in that Afterlife episode.
Yeah.
Jaron Hatch says, Deadlock, watching Kate Mulgrew get into a split-screen acting competition with herself is worth all the technobabble and plot absurdities combined. It's kind of emblematic of both everything great and silly about Voyager. I will say the green screen has to be blocked awkwardly where it looks like they want to kiss each other. Yeah.
Why were they so close?
Yeah.
Like there's nobody else in that room.
Just for that effect, I guess, right? Because you could more easily just shoot it where they're standing apart from each other and make it look more like cinematically interesting, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like it's a waste of money to do it that way.
It does.
Because I mean, it's got to be expensive for that show to do that effect. So I'm surprised they didn't just do that effect once, like
and just
briefly.
Time consuming. You know, it's like one of those little margin for error things where the actress has to stand exactly right and stuff like that. And it's just
I'm
not
sure
worth
there's timing built into it for lines and stuff.
TNG would have turned this into a philosophical allegory. DS9 would have focused on the existential consequences for its characters, but Voyager decides to literally double down on the wackiness just because it can. It's ultimately fairly hollow and meaningless for how epic the stakes are, but no one pulls off hollow and meaninglessness with the same gusto and flair as Star Trek Voyager. I like Jaron's comment here. 3.5, fetal forehead ridges that somehow only rarely get stuck in the uterine walls out of 5.
I know, with that baby with that
razor blade face,
blade, why wasn't the idea, why don't we just, when it's time, we'll transport the baby out? Like there is such a thing as a scheduled C-section.
Yeah, the doctor's just been torturing this poor woman. Remember, she came in an earlier episode. She's like, my back hurts. I got sciatica. He's like, fuck it. Like, just get through it. You're strong. You don't need medication. They live in the future where you can get any kind of non-addictive painkiller to help with her pain. Aaron Million says Deadlock.
This felt like a cross between 2 of Trek's greatest episodes, Mirror Mirror from TOS and Yesterday's Enterprise from TNG. You have the alternate ship in the same place at the same time like Mirror Mirror, albeit the characters are not different versions of themselves. Then you have one ship sacrifice itself to save the other ship. Picard didn't specifically save his own ship in the regular timeline, but he thought that by saving the Enterprise C, that would result in the D existing later on. The twist of the damaged ship surviving at the end was great. I understand why some don't like the technobabble of this episode, but it didn't bother me because the story was strong. 5 dead Harry Kims out of 5.
Yeah, I guess everyone sees the damaged ship surviving as kind of an unexpected twist, which is interesting. I just didn't see it that way. Latte Librarian says, Deadlock, my brothers gave this episode 5 out of 5. Their only critique is that there was too much technobabble. Also, they hate Neelix. Everyone's agreeing on the technobabble, though, which is good. I honestly thought that was like brick. The first time they're explaining what happened to the ship, it's like, why is this 4 minutes of screen time to explain that there's a double of the ship out there somewhere?
Yeah.
This is Ken Sito.
Deadlock. There's a lot of technobabble here, but for once it's all building to an emotional point. Who'd have thought that was possible? The scenes of the Vidiians moving through the ship, harvesting the crew, are genuinely disturbing. My first 5 of the series.
Yep, agree about the Vidiians. Matt Ross says, I enjoy the absolute destruction of a Voyager and the end line weird is part of Starfleet's business. The first or second Harry's death I remember being surprised at and still makes me surprised. The defense of the ship of running and shooting backwards always drives me nuts, almost as much as the times people say recalibrate. It's also good to see that they can make the ship all shiny and clean and all the rocks and conduit are put away nicely. Naomi Wildman's entry into the show is a nice touch. 4 Harry Kims out of 5. The running with the phaser did make me laugh because it's like, I don't know. I just, for some reason, if you picture people doing that with actual guns, it's like remarkably dangerous how they're shooting their guns as they're running down the hallway. But Artorius with our next comment. I'll just read this one. It's easy.
They always, too, when they fire phasers when they're running, it's like, obviously they need to do it in special effects. So it's like a very steady beam.
Yes.
Whereas like if you were running and you were firing a phaser, it would be
going
like
all over.
It'd be like the Ghostbusters in the ballroom, just blasting everything.
Yeah, that's I think we talked about this. Why don't they just hold the phaser down and point it like a laser pointer to like hit things? Because there's no reason to really aim at stuff. You just kind of like strafe like your Cyclops, I guess.
Yeah.
That was always something that do the X-Men comics ever talk about that enough that like the greatest thing about Cyclops is that he shoots at whatever he's looking at so he can't miss, Right, yeah. His accuracy must be absurd. Must be absurdly high.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know if there's any like recoil to his blast though, so that might be part of it where maybe he's got to but yeah, you would think that he would never miss.
Or is it just driven by it comes directly out of his eyes at a 90-degree angle, and no matter what he's looking at, it just depends on what his eyes are facing. Does that make sense? Like it's not like an iris thing or the black part of your eye is not the point that shoots the beam out of you.
Oh, I see. That's a good question. I actually don't know.
Artorius says, when you're down in the hole and you think things just can't get worse, they do. I wonder if this episode would have been even more impactful if they let the people who died remain dead. Then follow it up with another episode of the ship trying to get back to working order, as if this was on another network today. Cough, HBO, cough. I could see them Game of Thronesing the crew. I guess it's Game of Thronesing the crew. But the only long-term effects we see from this is the recognition of what lengths Janeway is willing to go to ensure the safety of her crew. When you introduce challenges and stakes, it loses some of the impact when the outcome is always predetermined. There has to be struggle and sacrifice for the meaning to be more impactful when overcoming adversity. That being said, it's a good episode overall. 3 replacements out of 5. Royo is our next comment, and I've sent it to you post-haste.
Deadlock, The Last Jedi.
He talks trash Voyager. About Last Jedi, so you can handle this one.
The Last Jedi of Voyager episodes subverts expectations pointlessly and doesn't follow through on any of the consequences. I admittedly liked this episode more before The Last Jedi ruined the whole subverts expectations for no reason genre for me. TLJ ends apocalyptically with the Resistance practically wiped out and the war over just as Voyager limps away half destroyed, but the next movie/episode, none of this matters. I do enjoy just how dark this episode gets, showing just how brutal and terrifying the Vidiians are. Harry Kim dies horrifically of decompression, and the baby cells lose cohesion, i.e. the baby melted. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I feel like I need to give it some points for going there. Still, the classic Voyager reset buttons renders this all moot, which hurts more than usual given how screwed they are at the end of it. 4 out of 5. Yeah, I mean, with a show like that, I feel like you can only criticize these shows so much, or especially this show, for not opening the next episode with the ship being dead in the water for 6 weeks or whatever. You know, it's not. If it was Deep Space Nine, yeah, they would absolutely do that. But I don't know why
Enterprise
they would do
did
that
it for a couple episodes in the Xindi arc. Remember, the ship got damaged and it was like limping along. Yeah.
But, I mean, sometimes an episode's just an episode and the next one is not,
Yeah.
I do agree with his assessment of the end of Last Jedi, though.
Moving on, Christian Pouch says, Deadlock, one of my favorites of the series. It's thrilling, it's focused, it has action, it has a good dilemma, and while obviously we're going to have a reset button, it doesn't happen quite how you'd expect. The only real shame is the lack of follow-up after the episode. Really, this should have had a big impact on things afterwards, and it doesn't happen, but I'm not going to fault this one for that. 5 out of 5. Patrick Seba, it's a poem, I'll read it. The big reset button, she rears her large head, but only one baby born live is now dead. I guess that's a win, plus dead Harry Kim. The technobabble, though, my eyes, how they bled. 4 single sources of antimatter drawn through an alkalized phase discriminator in excess of its design parameters out of 5.
Modulate.
Enhance. Brandon Neil Howells is our next comment. Clay, sent it to you.
Deadlock. Dead silly, more like. Neelix asks a very pregnant woman to help him fix something. Then the entire bridge crew hang around wondering how long it will be until the baby is born. After the 2 Janeways meet, I just got annoyed because they're both so stubborn. I can guess what their decisions will be. I burst out laughing when the EMH is trying to hide from the Vidiians. Can't he just turn off his program? And Harry Kim dies again. Did anyone else watching with subtitles turned on oh, sorry. I'm having trouble reading that for some reason. Did anyone else watching with subtitles turned on see the doctor referred to as Dr. Zimmerman? My head hurts from being exposed to excessive amounts of technobabble. 3 fetal transplants out of 5.
Because there's a weird name reference in this one, too. Does Harry ask him? He's like, do you have a name? He's like, no, I don't have a name.
The doctor asks Harry if the doctor on the other ship had a name. And he says, I don't know. I never asked.
But that doesn't make any sense why he would ask that.
That's the kind of question you would ask someone on the other ship if the other ship is like
a mirror
very
universe.
Divergent. Yeah, very divergent from your own ship.
Yeah, that was.
And also, he doesn't turn himself off because he's holding the baby.
Yeah, he's holding the baby. He's gotta get Harry the baby. This one just gave birth. Her estrogen is off the charts, and he's like, "Where's the baby?" Good that they saved the baby, though. Matt Cabanas Adley says, can't wait for 5.5 seasons of Harry Kim saying, you're not my real captain. 5 clones out of 5. Another short one. J. Keys Gamer says, Deadlock. The Kim is dead. Long live the Kim. Nick the Rat says, Neelix is a piece of shit for bothering such a pregnant lady like that. And Alton Neelix should have had a wild threesome with the 2 Kesses before she went back. When she went back with Janeway, didn't they board an area that had the life support turned off? A wild episode that makes you question reality. And then this is the final one. Is short. Malo Perverso says Deadlock 3 out of 5. So thank you everybody for leaving your comments.
You forgot the other part of that comment.
Oh, absolutely! Exclamation points.
No, 3 out of 5. You guys should cover Stephen King's Thinner.
Cover Thinner. Yeah, well, I guess you can clarify here. You're just Thinner's not on the Stephen King second string.
No, unfortunately not. It is not on. It's not going to make the cut. Unfortunately, maybe somewhere down the line when things are a little.
We're doing weight loss year specials and incredible movies featuring incredible weight gain and weight loss.
Thinner is a fun movie, though. It stars the guy who plays the intense, I think he's a DA, no, the internal affairs guy from Law and Order.
Okay.
Who also was RoboCop in the 3rd RoboCop movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Huh. I'm trying to think. The 3rd one's the one where he flies around in a jetpack, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure is.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about this one at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Everyone seemed pretty high on that. A lot of 5s. More 5s than I've seen in a long time, I suppose. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it a 4. Yeah. I really liked it. I think, I would agree there's probably a couple things missing for it to really put it over the top. But I think as far as a fun, exciting sci-fi episode, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it more than I think it's good for whatever's that
sure,
that's
worth. Okay, I can see that.
Like, it's a 4 for me, too. I was pretty especially the early. I really like the opening. Like the ship really feels like it's falling apart in this one. I think they nailed that whole aspect to it. So I really like the early stuff. But once the technobabble sinks in, and then once there's nowhere else to go, I think it falls down a little bit too. So it's not an all-timer, but I did enjoy it. So I'll give it a 4. And I think that it's certainly an easy recommend for other people, I think, just because of the way that it watches. So that's it. Deadlock. We both give it 4s out of 5. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Clay, do you have anything you want to
say? We have our poll up for Rotten Horror Picture Show Patreon next year, where we are choosing between holiday horror movies and remakes and reboots and Video Nasties. And so far, Video Nasties is pretty far ahead. We've got actually, you know what? It's probably over by the time this episode comes out, isn't it?
It might be. It might just be ending because we're only a couple episodes of backlog at this point. So yeah, it's probably over.
Well, if it's over, I'm going to say it's probably going to be Video Nasties unless a bunch of people come out of the woodwork in the next couple days. So
yeah, there's 5 days left at this point, and it's got 53%. So one of the other categories could take it over at this point, but it's not easy to do at that point. So that's it. So you guys can vote on that if you have the access to it. We're living in our alternate reality where things are not quite the same, and so we'll see if the poll comes out the same. That's it. I guess we're done. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Happy Thanksgiving if we're getting close to that. Otherwise, happy Christmas if we're getting close to that at some point.
Oh, boy.
I'll just have to start giving out holiday greetings.
There's a house by me who has been putting up Christmas decorations since before Halloween.
Yeah, I noticed after Halloween, all the Christmas decorations have gone up here. Like the lights, at least, have gone up on a lot of houses. So it's too bad. It overshadows Thanksgiving, which is the best holiday of all the holidays, which is the downside of it.
Well, there's no frankly, it just comes down to there's nothing commercial about it, or like they've never managed to
it's hard to
figure out how to make a commercial.
Yeah. Besides,
you know what my problem with
stuff.
Christmas is? Too much red.
Mm-hmm.
Red is American Christmas, and I don't like it. For somewhere along the lines, Christmas turned into red and white instead of red and green.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when. And I think it's just a Santa thing, which just triggers thoughts of buying stuff in your brain.
It's easier to write on the white too to give
That's
cards
true.
and stuff. So they need to have a lot of snow.
I want Victorian England spooky ghost story Christmas.
Yep.
That's green, a lot of green, and a little bit of red.
A little bit of red. Some light yellow lights just sprinkled in there. Just a dusting of lights on top of it. Not those big bulby color bulb things. Not those.
The kind of Christmas they celebrate in the Nexus.
That's right. I want a color correction that's gone wrong with just blue overtones on my Christmas. And just looking at everything, it's slightly blue. All right.
With Whoopi Goldberg inside a Christmas ornament on my tree.
Well, we just had that Q episode where Q was inside or was holding the Christmas ornament, right? The ship was like a Christmas ornament.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We'll be back next time with the next Voyager episode, which I think is it's Tuvok and the Kids. Innocence. I think it's called Innocence. Excuse me for yawning. So we'll see you in a week. Bye.